Hello there, boys and girls of class 11. I'm Khondukar Noshin Islam, lecturer in botany at Rajakutura Model College. Hopefully, you all are safe and fine and having a productive time at home. So, as we're all aware of the current situation, and therefore, it is you are actually losing precious time, and which is why college has taken the decision of taking classes from the syllabus of class 12, so that when the situation gets normal, um, you don't have to waste any more time and can keep the pace of your study. Okay, so therefore today we're going to discuss about chapter 8 from biology first paper book, and the name of the chapter is tissue and tissue system. And today's lecture we're going to discuss about tissue. So you know that tissue are groups or masses of cells that are originated from the same source, are structurally similar and performs the same function. Next is the classification of tissue. So on the basis of the division capacity of the cells forming the tissue, it can be divided into two categories. First is meristematic tissue and the second is permanent tissue. Meristematic tissue are consisted of a group of cells which remain in a continuous state of division, or they may retain the power of division. So here is a diagram depicting a typical meristematic tissue. So from the diagram you can see that all the cells forming the tissue are alike in nature. They have the same size, same shape, and same structure. Then the cells are very compactly arranged, and hence there is no intercellular space between these. Then there is a prominent nucleus in each of the cell, and you can see that cytoplasm is present. So these are the characteristics of meristematic tissue, which we are going to discuss about in the next slide. So first of all, the cells of the meristematic tissue are living. These are comparatively smaller and similar in diameter. Then we have got to know that the cells always remain in a state of division and growth. Then the shape of the cells are usually rectangular, oval, pentagonal, or hexagonal. Then the wall of the cells are thin, and these cells possess abundant thick cytoplasm. Then each of the cell of the meristematic tissue contain a large and prominent nucleus, and there is no vacuole present in the cell. Then generally there is no intercellular space between the cells of meristematic tissue. Then as we have already mentioned, that the cells always remain in a state of division. That means the cells are always dividing. Therefore the metabolic activity, the rate of metabolic activity is very high in these cells. That means the cells always remain in active metabolic state. Then there is no stored food, then no sort of secreted substance or waste material can be found in these cells. Next character is that the plastids that are found in the cells of meristematic tissue actually remain in proplastid state. Proplastid is a small organelle found in the meristematic region from which plastids are derived, like chloroplast, chromoplast, and leucoplast. Okay, so next we're going to discuss about the functions of meristematic tissue. First of all, due to the activity of apical meristems, means the meristematic tissue that are present in the apical region of the plants, and due to the activity of this tissue, the organs increase in length, and therefore the plant increases in height and length. Next, the meristematic tissue present in the lateral region of the plant increases the diameter of the plants, means the width of the plants, right? Next is the permanent tissues are originated from meristematic tissue. Lastly, meristematic tissue also plays significant role in healing wounds. Whenever there is an injury in the body of the plant, then the meristematic tissue surrounding the wound starts dividing and therefore heals it. Okay, so now we're going to discuss about the classification of meristematic tissue. So meristematic tissue can be divided on the basis of the following criteria. There are four criteria on which we can divide meristematic tissue. First is origin of initiating cells. Next is the position in plant body, that means where the meristematic tissue is located in the plant body. Then the division capacity of the cells, and lastly on the function it performs. On the basis of this criteria, we're going to classify meristematic tissue. First of all, meristems based on origin can be divided into three types. First is promeristem. So there is a region in the apex of root and shoot of plants from which primary meristems, that means the second one, primary meristems are originated. These are known as promeristem at the apex of root and shoot, and these are responsible for the origination of primary meristems. So the very beginning, the growth of a plant actually starts from this promeristem. Okay, next is the primary meristem. These are the meristems that originates at the embryonic stage of a plant, that means at the very early age of growth, right? And they are present at the shoot and root tip, and due to the division of such cells, the height of a plant increases. Primary permanent tissue is originated from primary meristem. Third type is secondary meristem. These are arising from permanent tissue. So primary meristem was derived from promeristem, which was a meristematic tissue, but secondary meristem are the meristems that can be derived from permanent tissue. Sometimes the cells of permanent tissue can adopt the ability to divide themselves. These are known as secondary meristem, and it appears later at a stage of development of an organ of a plant. Okay, next we're going to discuss about the classification of meristematic tissue on the basis of the position in plant body. First is apical meristem, which lies at the apex of root, shoot and branches, and due to the activities of this meristem, the organs increase in length. So this is more or less the characteristics of primary meristem when we got to know about it. So we can say that on the basis of position, we are terming it as apical meristem, this type of tissue, and on the basis of origin, these tissues are known as primary tissue. Okay, then there is intercalary meristem. Sometimes portions of apical meristem become separated from the apex during the development by layers of more mature and permanent tissues, and these are left behind in between permanent tissues and are known as intercalary meristem. So these are part of primary meristem that gets separated and can be found in between permanent tissues. Intercalary meristems can be found in petioles, base of the midrib or beneath the leaf joint. These are the examples. Examples are very important, so make sure you memorize it. Okay. Next is lateral meristem. These are present perpendicularly along the side of root and shoot, the 90-degree angle, right? Perpendicular. These are situated between two permanent tissues. They originated from permanent tissues. So these are secondary meristem in nature, because we know that meristematic tissue derived from the permanent tissue are known as secondary meristem. Okay, some of the example of lateral meristems are interfascicular cambium. This is the cambium found in between two vascular bundle, or cambium. So lateral meristem is responsible for increasing thickness in plants. So next is the figure showing meristematic tissue on the basis of position in plant. So first of all, at the apex we can see the apical meristem. Then next, in between two permanent tissue, there is intercalary meristem, which got separated from this apical meristem and then got stuck in between permanent tissues. Then there is lateral meristem, perpendicularly due to the activity of which the plant body increases in thickness, right? Then here is a transverse section of a shoot showing the lateral meristem only. Here you can see the lateral meristem only. Okay, Next is meristematic classification of meristematic tissue on the basis of plane of cell division, on how many plane the cell can divide. So first is mass meristem. The cells of mass meristem divide in all planes, and thus the tissue increases in volume. No definite plane can divide in any direction or any plane. Okay, the derivative cells are isodiametric or spheroidal or have no definite shape. Some of the examples of mass meristem are young embryos, pollen sac, endosperms, pith, and cortex. Next is plate meristem. Meristematic cells that can only divide in two planes, so they look like plate. So through this division, the organs increase in volume. An example of plate meristem is leaves. They can divide in only two planes and they look like a plate, sort of like leaf look like a plate, right? Third type is rib meristem. The meristems which divides in only one plane, as a result remain in a single row in a linear fashion and they look like the ribs of a chest. These are known as a rib meristem. Some of the examples are growing root, medullary rays of stem. So only this can divide in only one plane and therefore they form a linear structure. Okay, and as they look like the rib of the chest, therefore these are termed as rib meristem. Examples, need to memorize the examples. So next is the classification of meristems based on function. First is protoderm. These are the type of meristematic tissue that forms the epidermis or the outer layer of the plants. Second is procambium. This type of meristematic tissue forms a cambium, xylem, and phloem, vascular tissues, right? Next is a ground meristem. The portion of the apical meristem that undergo repetitive division to form the base of the plant. So ground meristem are the meristematic tissue that form the base of the plant. The examples are that are cortex, pith, and pith rays. These are the part of ground meristem. Next is permanent tissue. The tissue that contains cells that are incapable of undergoing cell division are called permanent tissue. The characteristics of permanent tissue will be more or less opposite of the meristematic tissue. So these are unable to divide, first of all. Then permanent tissue contains both living and non-living cells. So if the cells are living, then they have comparatively less cytoplasm, and if the cells are dead or non-living, they do not have any protoplasm. Then the cell wall is comparatively thick. Then the cells contain vacuole, which is enlarged in size. Nucleus is smaller than usual and actually situated in the periphery region. Then the cell wall of the tissues of the permanent tissue the cell wall of the cells of permanent tissue has various design or ornamentation. This is observed in the cell wall of permanent tissue. Then the types of permanent tissue. You have learned about the types of permanent tissue in class 9 and 10 very broadly. So here I'm just going to discuss about it shortly so that you get the idea of it and get reminded of it. Okay, so first of all, primary tissues can be of three types. The first is simple tissue, which is made up of only one type of cells. Therefore they form a uniform of homogeneous system of cells. Next is complex tissue, which is made up of more than one type of cells and they work together as a unit. This tissue is distributed through the roots to leaves. Complex tissue is actually associated with the transportation of food and water. So the example of complex tissue is xylem and phloem. So xylem is associated with the conduction of water and phloem is responsible for the transportation of food throughout the body. Then there is secretory tissue. These are concerned with the secretion of gums, resins, volatile oils, nectar, latex, and other substances. So these are the types of permanent tissue. Next, here is a flow chart showing shortly about the classification of permanent tissue. So first of all, we classified it into three types: as simple tissue, complex tissue, and secretory tissue. So simple tissue can be of three types, right? Parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma. Complex tissue can be further divided into two types. First is xylem and second is phloem. Secretory tissue can be of two types: latissiferous and glandular. So it's just you have learned all about it in your previous classes, but I would recommend for you to go through it all over again so that you can understand it better. Okay. Next topic is very important. It is the comparison between meristematic and permanent tissue. So when you are mentioned to write down the comparison between these two tissues, you must include similarities and dissimilarities both. So first of all, similarities are that both of these tissues are tissue systems in plants. Then these both of these are composed of group of cells performing specific functions. The meristematic tissues and some permanent tissues, for example parenchyma, are homogeneous. That means made up of one type of cell, right? Not all the permanent tissues, but parenchyma, these are made up of one type of cell, which is the characteristic of meristematic tissue. Okay. So next are the dissimilarities between meristematic and permanent tissue. First of all, meristematic tissue composed of undifferentiated cells, whereas permanent tissue composed of differentiated cells. The cells of meristematic tissue are living, whereas the permanent tissue contain both living and non-living cells. The cytoplasm of meristematic tissue are dense, but in case of permanent tissue, cells may, for example parenchyma, and may not contain cytoplasm, like sclerenchyma. Parenchyma contains cytoplasm, but in case of sclerenchyma, because these cells are dead, they do not have any cytoplasm. Next, meristematic tissue contain prominent nucleus. Each cell of meristematic tissue contain prominent nucleus, but the cells of permanent tissue may or may not contain nucleus. Like parenchyma contain nucleus, but sclerenchyma do not contain any nucleus. Cell wall of meristematic tissue are thin, whereas the cell wall of permanent tissue is thick. Then the cells are capable of undergoing a rapid division in case of meristematic tissue, and in case of permanent tissue, no division is seen. Then intercellular space is absent in meristematic, in the cells, in between the cells of meristematic tissue, but it is found in case of the cells of permanent tissue. And then there is no vacuole in the cells of meristematic tissue, but cells of permanent tissue are vacuolated. Then the metabolism rate is high in the cells of meristematic tissue, whereas less or no metabolism is seen in case of the cells of permanent tissue. Okay, so that's all that you needed to know from tissue. So if you have any question or queries, or if you could not understand anything, don't feel free to let me know. I'm always here to help you, and I would really appreciate if you utilize this time and complete all the lessons so that it does not burden you later on. Okay, so that's all for today. I stay well, take care, and thank you very much for listening. Good luck.